Welcome to GarageBand Weekly. Boy, oh boy, there's been a lot going on in the world of GarageBand and Logic Pro and iPads and iPhones and Macs and all of the stuff. So this week, I've decided I'm not going to go it alone. I need help. I need support. And there's only one man that can fit the bill, and that is this guy here. That is Patrick from the GarageBand Guide. How you going, mate?
I'm very good, Pete. Thank you very much for having me on again. Much appreciated.
Always my pleasure. It seems like about every 6 months or 12 months, Apple does a thing, and then we get together and we chat about it. And now they've done a bunch of things in a row. So I thought, what better time than to get together and chat about it? How have things been going over on the GarageBand Guide, mate?
Yeah, good. Like you say, Apple keep announcing lots of new stuff and Logic and GarageBand. So yeah, lots to keep me busy, as I'm sure you have been kept busy too.
Yeah, absolutely. And people that don't know, you're not only the GarageBand Guide, or the GarageBand Guide, you're the Logic Pro Guide, which is great because there's only one way to pronounce Logic Pro Guide. So how's the Logic Pro Guide been doing of late? Lots of Logic Pro news with the new 2.2 update, no doubt.
You mean the Logic Pro Guide, yeah?
Oh, Logic! Oh, très bien! Oh, I should have known better. Yes, Logic.
Très bien. Yeah, I mean, like you say, lots of exciting new stuff. Logic seems to be getting a lot of love at the minute, especially the iPad version. So, yeah, lots of exciting stuff happening.
Very cool. Well, we're here to talk about a few things, and I did say I was chatting to Patrick in the pre-show. We always go off on tangents, so if you're here live, be prepared for some tangents on the premiere, and if you're watching on the replay, drop your comments down below. Don't forget the likes and the subscribes and everything. And I've got the GarageBand Guide and the Logic Pro Guide and your website. They're all in the doodly-doo down below. So if folks don't know who you are, I used to do the whole, Patrick, give us your elevator pitch. But you know what? If you're watching me and you're watching a show called the GarageBand Guide and you don't know who Patrick is, that's your problem, not ours. So I'm not going to even let you introduce yourself at all here. So yeah, we're talking iPadOS 26. We're talking Logic Pro for iPad 2.2. Maybe we'll dabble in a little bit of Mac because, as I've said before, whenever anyone asks me a Mac question, I'm just like handball over to Patrick because I still don't know my Mac stuff. I still struggle when it comes to Mac. But you know what the good news is, Patrick? The iPad, is it just the Mac now? Tell us your thought. When you saw this iPadOS 26 stuff being dropped at WWDC, were you surprised? Were you happy, sad, worried, gassy? What was your immediate reaction to the big
gassy,
announcement?
Yeah. I mean, it does kind of look very Mac-like, doesn't it? It almost seems like they've actually listened to what people have been asking for the last... how many years? It's crazy. Really, really interesting to see Apple kind of add that stuff in. A part of me does wonder if a lot of these new features, because they had pretty much nothing AI-wise to talk about this year, they went, what have we got? So what can we throw in here as a big headline release? And so they finally kind of added all this Mac stuff. So
that's an interesting take.
As I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah.
It's not just that it looks like a Mac now. They've added in lots of really good extra functionality that actually is quite helpful to people who use their iPad to make music as well, which is great.
Yeah, which is true. So if you missed the memo, if you haven't caught it, if you haven't watched Patrick's latest videos, my latest videos about iPadOS 26, so WWDC, Worldwide Developers Conference, this is Apple's big opportunity to flout their wares, to tell us why they're great. And as you mentioned, as you've already alluded to, last year, it was the year of Apple intelligence. And why don't we start with that? Let's go back in time. We'll go back in time and talk about Apple intelligence from 2024. And how much Apple intelligence are you using now, Patrick? Are you all in on Apple intelligence with all those things that they promised us last year?
Do we have to go back and talk about it? Can we just skip over it? I'm pretty sure Apple would like to skip over it, right? Yeah. Not great, really. I don't know if you've seen any of the interviews. They were actually quite, who was it? Craig Federighi and Who's the other guy?
Jaws.
That's
I
it.
never remember
Jaws.
his name. I just call him Jaws. And
Jaws.
I used to think it was Jaws, but it's Jaws, I think. It's
Is
just
it?
the American accent. It's someone Jozkowski. And
Yeah.
all the Apple nerds are just like shaking their fists at it right now, going, as if you do not know the name of this man.
Well, they've been doing like lots of interviews. I've seen several interviews with, and not particularly softball interviews either. There was one in particular with, who was it? Was it the Wall Street Journal? I can't remember what the woman's name was, but
I can't
she
either.
was properly grilling them about this stuff. About, you promised all this last year and it isn't here. People bought iPhones based on the stuff you said was going to be on there, and it's not on there. So what's going on? And of course, I mean, they're all fantastically well media trained, so they managed to kind of sidestep around and stuff like that. But do I use any Apple Intelligence stuff? Not really. Some of the stuff, so the most I use, I don't use any Genmoji stuff. I don't know anybody who does.
I tried to.
Some of the writing tools are quite interesting, but I don't think they're any better than other options out there like ChatGPT and things like that. I don't think I would ever choose the Apple version of that over the other options out there. So, I mean, really, from a personal standpoint, I don't really use any of it. And I have an iPhone that's slightly older. I have an iPhone 13, so it's not even on there. And I certainly don't feel like I'm missing anything. What about you?
Yeah, no, I tried to use the Genmoji. I tried to use Image Playground. I tried to do this. I put the summaries on there, and it just was very confusing. It was summarizing things in quite comical ways at times, and I think they removed some of those features as well. So, yeah, there really wasn't much for us last year, and I kind of say that to kind of bury the lead a bit, because things changed. 2025 came around and Apple Intelligence was not mentioned as much. Did they say the S word at all? Was it once or twice in the whole thing that they talked about our
At
favorite
the start, they
digital
mentioned
assistants?
it pretty much as just to say, Siri, it's not here. Sorry. Moving on. Pretty much.
So I was like, oh, okay, where are we going with this? And then we got it. All right, so let's cut to the chase here. Multitasking, multi-windows, the ability to maximize, minimize. You can tile things. You've got the ability to select your audio input now. The Files app has been updated. It's just Finder now, basically. What do you think? What was your first thoughts when you started hearing this stuff and you're like, hang on, is this the moment? Is this the moment where the iPad is finally the pro-creation device, the MacBook Lite that we've all been waiting for?
Definitely a step in the right direction, I think. And I think it's great that they've kind of taken what works from the Mac and put it into iPadOS, because it does open it up and make it far more flexible than it was previously, even with something like Stage Manager, which I never really used. I was never really a massive fan of it. I just couldn't quite. And I think this is a far better multitasking system than that anyway. Watching the keynote, it all looked amazing, but then actually downloading the developer beta and using it, it actually is really quite transformative in terms of how you'll use your iPad, you know, which, and in a good way, not in a bad way. So I'm really quite excited. I'm excited to see how the beta develops as the public version comes out, and then when the actual full release lands in the autumn, I think it's going to be quite an eye-opener for a lot of people.
I think so too, and thank you for using autumn, the correct word for the season that comes
Fall.
straight fall. I must admit I've been taking the piss a little bit, because in all my videos I'm like, and the full version will be out in fall, which people tell me is September, which is also spring in my country. So yeah, it was interesting. It was great to see them eat a little humble pie. Would it be fair to say that compared to the previous year? So we had, for instance, we had Stage Manager. You mentioned that. We had split screen. We had slide over. It was almost like they were just teasing us. They were like, this can do all the things you want it to do, but we're going to give you this pared down version where you can not quite do exactly what you want to do instead. So now they've just said, screw it, just make it the Mac. And is that where we're at now? Is it just like, because I know we've talked in the past. I famously said there will never be Logic Pro for iPad, and we'll talk about that a bit later because there's been some updates there. But I've also said there'll never be a touchscreen Mac, and they'll never put Mac OS on the iPad. And I'm still correct on both fronts. But this is basically that, isn't it? Is iPadOS 26 and the new macOS 26, are they so close that they're almost indistinguishable for some users?
Maybe. I mean, I think it's quite clear that Apple still don't. I mean, they could easily just put macOS on the iPad. It's the same chipset and things, so they could just do that if they wanted to. They obviously don't want to do that. And again, going back to some of those interviews, it's quite clear that they don't want you to choose between a Mac or an iPad. They want you to have a Mac and an iPad. So I think it's still kind of set up, certainly in Apple's eyes, as like an ancillary, an extra device to your main Mac, which is, I mean, not everybody is going to have a Mac that's their main machine, but it's how Apple see it, I think.
Yes.
So yeah, as close as we're going to get, but I mean, Apple tend to release 1.0 versions of things and then refine them over time. So even as just a first step into this very macOS style of way of working on the iPad,
Well,
it's really good. And it opens the door to more Mac-like things in the future, which is a good thing.
That's actually a good point and pretty exciting, because the other thing to keep in mind, and by the way, I've given this warning in my videos, which is that we are using this right now. We're using the iPadOS 26 development beta. I don't know about you, but it's crashed many times on me. I'll be doing something and it just doesn't quite work. If you're in the middle of a big project, don't update. Don't update on your main daily driver machine. If it's a critical use device, your phone, for instance, I wouldn't be updating my phone right now, and I'm not going to be. But if you want to do it, if you want to live on the edge, go for it. But yeah, we're very far out. This is sort of development beta, and then next month in July we'll have the public version, and then the final release again will be in fall 2025 when the new iPhone is the iPhone. Side note, I did mention that we'll go off on tangents. The new iPhone, is it going to be iPhone 26 or is it going to be iPhone 17? Are they going to just align the iPhone with the iOS versions?
They've got the new thinner, what people are calling the iPhone Air coming out this year as well, haven't they? So,
well, yeah, that's been rumoured.
They'll have the iPhone Pro Max or Pro, and then the iPhone Air, and then the regular iPhone. Is it going to be 3 different SKUs? Are they all going to be iPhone 26 Air, Max? Who knows? I mean, it's not like Apple to confuse things unnecessarily, Pete, so I'm sure it'll be fine.
You know what they'll do? They'll just go back. You know how the iPad just became iPad again? Like the latest version, it was like 8th gen, 7th gen, 8th gen, and then it's like iPad. It'll just be that. They'll just go back to iPhone. So you won't know. The new version will just be iPhone, and you'll just have to work it out yourself what year and what version it was from. So you've done a couple of fantastic videos. I've been promoting these on last week's GarageBand Weekly and right throughout on my videos. You've been looking at all this sort of stuff and kind of buried in the weeds. Like, we'll talk about the other stuff as well in a moment, but buried under this is probably what I think is the most revolutionary thing, which is that we can now, hallelujah chorus, like let's get that prompted up here, choose your audio device in iPad. And you've done some experimenting and testing and a whole bunch of work with different audio interfaces and things. Can you enlighten us about how that all went and what's actually changed and what you think this means for the future of professional creation on iPad?
Yeah, so this affects GarageBand mostly. You already in Logic Pro for iPad, for example, have the option at an app level to set your input and your output, but now in Control Center, when you swipe down on the top right hand side, you can access a menu where you can select which microphone your iPad is going to use at a system level. Now, previously with GarageBand, if you were to plug an audio interface into your iPad and then a microphone into the audio interface, GarageBand would default to that thing you've attached, and you couldn't change that. You could change the inputs inside the app, but you couldn't swap out, for example, the attached audio interface, a microphone, for your iPad's built-in microphone. And you certainly couldn't attach multiple audio interfaces and decide and choose between them. You can now. So in this menu, you tap on the section for your microphone, and in my video I connected up, just because it's the biggest adapter I had, 3 different audio interfaces.
I loved it.
And
it was so cool.
In this menu, you can select between your iPad's built-in mic. You can select between one audio interface, a second audio interface, or the third one in this menu, and then GarageBand will just use that. So, I mean, it doesn't sound like massive groundbreaking stuff, but I mean, for anybody who's kind of felt constricted in that way in GarageBand, it's huge. And it's really good to
Yep.
see that something at a system level like this can affect and improve the experience of apps. You could
Yeah.
already select your output, and I didn't know this until, God, the end of last year. You can select your output using the now playing
Oh,
widget
yes.
inside Control Center. So it's
Yeah,
the one that
yep.
looks like it's for Apple Music. But even in the current version of iPadOS, if you add that to your Control Center and tap on it, you can select different outputs.
Yep.
So they've kind of had this system level control a little bit in there already, but I mean, it's an incredible addition and really powerful, especially for GarageBand users, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And it's amazing that this didn't exist. And look, we'll talk about it's a bit of a theme. You can be critical, and look, plenty of people in my comment section and your comment section and the Facebook groups that we traverse in have been critical about Apple's delays in doing some of these things that, I don't know, perhaps they could have done 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It seems like fairly simple kinds of things. The fact that we have windowing now in iPad, which, you know, Microsoft Windows 3.0 came out in 1989. So, yeah, look, we've had Windows and Mac OS, like the very first Mac interface that they stole from, I mean, they were inspired by Xerox, came out in like the 80s as well. So we've had Windows and we've had cascading and tiles and all that sort of stuff for a very long time. But it is still nice to see that we have this change. And for those, because this is GarageBand Weekly, this is where we talk about GarageBand. For those that are thinking, oh, this is only for people that are using mixers and audio interfaces and a bunch of different mics, the very fact that exactly what you said, you can now select the internal mic. And I don't know if you've played around with the internal microphone on your iPhones and your iPads lately in GarageBand, they sound pretty bloody good. Like, if you don't have a microphone handy, if you're on the go, if you're being portable, the problem was sometimes you'd plug in USB headphones and they would use that mic. There was no way to actually go in there and tweak things and change the exact audio input you wanted and the exact audio output you wanted. So, I mean, it's still development beta, so maybe they'll change that. Maybe they'll lock it down so we can't have fun and do things like that.
Surely
But
not.
I'm loving the idea right now that the world where we can actually just do that, because the question I get asked from folks all the time is, why can't I just use the Apple say we've got studio quality, like 5 studio quality microphones in my iPad, and as soon as you plug anything into that USB port, you can't use your internal microphone. So it seems like a waste, and it's something we've got now. What about the windowing? Are you seeing a world where you use multiple apps at a time? Are you seeing a use case and value for this, either with GarageBand or probably more so with Logic Pro for iPad?
I think for both. So again, in one of those videos I went over how you can now import samples and MIDI files and stuff direct from the Files app. You can just drag and drop direct into GarageBand's window. Before that, you had to go through the Loop browser in GarageBand. You had to manually access your Files app. You couldn't audition any samples, so you couldn't listen to them before you brought them into GarageBand. There was a 10-second delay. It was then available. You could then drag and drop it into your project, discover it wasn't the one you wanted, delete it, and then do it all over again. Whereas now, because you can add different windows and have them overlaying other windows, you can just open the Files app, you can audition the sample you want to see or you want to hear what it sounds like, tap, hold, drag, drop it into GarageBand, and it's
So
that simple.
good.
It's really interesting. So again, this is why perhaps I think maybe some of this stuff was just thrown in at the last minute. So in Logic Pro, about 6 months ago, we had a solution to one of the biggest problems that people had with Logic Pro for iPad, which was getting samples into it. They added a sample folder system where you could add things to the library or the library browser in Logic Pro for iPad, and you could add kind of sample packs that way without having to come out of the app. And that is kind of been made obsolete kind of by this. So using the same process, you can now have Logic as one window, you can have your Files app as the other window, and then just drag and drop between the two. You don't even really need to use that sample folders feature.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a strange one. I don't know why they would add that feature if they knew this was coming.
And it does add a bit of credibility to the rumor that this wasn't coming, that this was very much a knee-jerk reaction to the perceived failure, is that too strong a word? Lack of adoption of Apple Intelligence and lack of competitiveness of Apple Intelligence, that they needed something. So, yeah, when they put that, because that was Logic Pro 2.1, which we're talking 6 months plus ago. So I've got a feeling that at that point in time, the Apple developers that were working with Logic Pro just knew that everyone was clamoring for having a better solution for managing samples and managing loops in Logic Pro. So they added this in. And now the other development team that are working on the overall iPadOS have said, well, actually, here's a better solution for you that you can actually use. And it's got so many benefits. Again, I know we're jumping between GarageBand and Logic. I know sometimes people get annoyed with that, so sorry. But it's all encapsulated in all these changes. But Logic Pro for iPad, the biggest challenge with that sample, it was great to be able to bring for individual samples, but if you wanted to bring a bunch of stems in or multiple files, you couldn't do that. Now you got the Files app, you can load up and you can bring in a whole like 20 tracks of stems and just pull them across. And like you say, everything is drag and drop, everything is available. And if you can select it in Files, you can bring it in. And did you actually, I haven't tried that. Have you tried multiple files into GarageBand? Does that work, or is it only one at a time? Or is that something everyone needs to run out and try now?
I don't think I tried. You can import MIDI files in, so package MIDI files. So if you were to, and it will,
that'll
when you drag it in, it will kind of separate out into different tracks. So that still works the same way it did the previous. We haven't tried multiple audio tracks, though.
That would be interesting if you could grab stems from, say if someone's a Logic user and you're a GarageBand user and you want to bring Logic stems into GarageBand or whatever, you could probably pull them over. And I wonder if you bring in 8 audio files. There you go. If you're watching this at home, Patrick and I have probably already tried it already because we're giant nerds, and we'll go away after this pre-record and try it immediately. But
I'll race you. You can get the video out first.
You'll be watching this, you'll be like, Patrick and Pete both put a video out about importing multiple audio files into GarageBand on the exact same day. What a coincidence. And then you watch this and you're like,
I've got to go actually, Pete. Yes, sorry, bye. See you.
Patrick has an advantage here because it's, as we're recording, it's 9 p.m. and for me and it's 12:30 in the afternoon for him. So I see you. That's going to be the video out tomorrow. It is funny. I joke about it all the time that that people must think that, like, but before they saw that we get on here and we clown around on these videos and that we have fun, they're like, oh, they must be, they're the two GarageBand iOS guys, and Patrick must hate Pete because Patrick had it all to himself, and then Pete came in and started making videos, and then Pete must be like, oh, that Patrick is cutting my lunch and making a thing. Funnily enough, we do share our ideas, and occasionally we'll come out with the same idea, not even about a new thing, but about something that was out years ago, and I'll put a video out and you'll be like, bastard, here's my full plan that I was about to do, and I'll be like, oh, Patrick just did another, like a connecting audio interface video, and oh well, I'll do something else today. So yes, it's far from a rivalry, but it is funny because when you're covering the same stuff, you do come across those sort of things. But we do it very differently, I like to say. And I think my answer to that is everyone should watch every video that both of us ever produce, and then
that's it. We could both make a video on an identical subject, and they'd be different enough from each other that it'd be worth watching them both, really, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, which we'll talk about because we'll talk about the dance floor rush, which I know that you've been making all the disco beats in the last couple of weeks since that one came out. We'll get to that. If you're sitting here going, I want to hear about the Logic Pro and the GarageBand updates that we had, we will get to that, but we've got a couple of things to finish off here. Files app, mate, have you played with the tags and the colors and the different ways of laying out? Is this as big as many folks are saying it is? Is this going to be as much of a game changer that perhaps we are hoping that it's going to be more like Finder or File Explorer, or is it just still the same Files app with a few little the sort of coats of paint?
Seems to be a lot more powerful and a lot more Mac OS like, but I haven't really, I know you've done a dedicated video on it, so you might be better to kind of speak to this. I've kind of played around with it, but I haven't kind of put it through its paces as such. So what would you say are like some of the biggest benefits of the new version? Yeah,
look, I don't like the putting it on your dock thing. So you might have seen that, or they talked about it in the demo on the WWDC, that you can put a folder down in the dock. And I've always been a guy, I like to have my folders set up in a particular way, and I've never been you use your desktop as your folder kind of guy. So that wasn't really for me. But hey, if you want convenient access to things, it's there. I like the fact that, yeah, you can add in a bunch of new columns. So again, I'm an organization nerd from way back, and I come from the DOS days and the Windows Explorer day. I use Norton Commander and Xtree and all of these file managers back in the day. So I love the idea of having complete visibility of all your files. The size of your files is often hard to find in iOS and iPadOS. So the new Files app makes that one of the things you can sort by. And where are all my big files I must delete because my iCloud drive is filled up? That's kind of handy. And a weird one is that the date created and the date modified. I don't know if you have this thing, but sometimes you want to search by the date created of a file versus the date modified, because you might open a project, do nothing to it and close it again, and suddenly the date modified is today. But that was a project you created 4 years ago. And then you try to reorder things, and all these projects that you've worked on ages ago that you don't care about keep coming up to the top. So I do like the fact that you can add in date created and date modified. So yeah, look, it's small changes, it's quality of life stuff really, but I think it's going to be good and better, and managing things like with again, when you're using iCloud Drive and your iPad and your iPhone and even external drives and things. And another a tip for people, if you're trying this stuff out, because of the fact that you can open up with multiple windows now, you can have two files apps. So if you've got like an external drive and your internal drive, it just makes it so much more convenient, because if you've ever tried to copy between a drive or a location and another location, it keeps switching between them. And now you can just say, look, my left is 100% dedicated on this USB drive that I've got plugged in, and then the right side is just my iPad. And then I know that external's that side, internal's that side. So, yeah, I don't think it's a massive change, but it's definitely got some things in there that will help the power users. And I think, I don't know, is this an update for power users? Do you think your regular mums and dads using their iPads give a crap about any of this at the end of the day?
I don't know. I mean, you don't have to access any of this stuff. So this incredible windowed mode that we're talking about, I don't think that's switched on by default, or is it? I can't remember when I installed the beta, because you still have...
It asks you which one you want, I reckon.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, absolutely. Because when you go into the settings menu, you have the option of having the way it is now, or the way you probably have it set now, just singular apps fill up the whole screen. You can have it windowed, or you can still use Stage Manager for the one person that likes using Stage Manager.
You're out there. I know you're watching right now. Please drop your Stage Manager love in the comments, because we don't know who you are, and neither do Apple, but they left it in there.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's flexibility, isn't it? They've put all this work into this great new way of working with your apps and things, but people might not choose to use it. It's really interesting how different this is going to make iPads from iPhones.
Yes.
Because iPhone is getting none of this at all. So, I mean, it's quite interesting how different it will actually be, because at the minute, they're even though they kind of separated iOS and iPadOS out a few years ago, they're still very similar in the way that they work. But a lot of this extra file stuff isn't coming to iOS, as far as I'm aware. The Windows stuff isn't coming to iOS. No. And I'm trying to think back to the presentation. I don't think the audio stuff in Control Center is coming to iOS either. So
it didn't specify, and I must admit I haven't tried it. Someone out there has, and someone is jumping in the comments right now saying, "Oh, I've got iOS 26 beta, and it is there or it's not there." So please let us know. By the way, we do. This is our job, but we also don't live and breathe it, because we have families and and need to sleep and all that sort of thing. So we're only a week into all this stuff, so we haven't tried absolutely everything, but definitely try it out. One final thing that I'll mention on this, and it's interesting that they've done this. So previously, this was all Pro features too. So you mentioned the differentiation between the iPhone and the iPad. There was also a big gap between the iPad and the iPad Pro. So a lot of these Stage Manager and a lot of the additional features you were getting were Pro only. They've gone back to like iPad Generation 8 and iPad Mini 5. Like, if you've got a device that was made in the last, I want to say 7 years, it's going to work with iPad OS 26, and you're going to be able to use all of these different tools. So were you surprised by that they've kind of delineated the Pro to the consumer stuff with this?
Absolutely. I think it's fantastic. I think it's a great decision. And I mean, I've got an iPad Mini 6 that I use daily. It's my daily driver. Do we still say that? I don't know.
I did the other day, and I'm like, is that what we're saying still? Like, do I sound really old saying daily driver?
But yeah, I mean, and I haven't got the beta installed on that, but all the features will work on it. It'll run the windowed mode and things like that. Stage Manager doesn't work on it.
No.
But the new kind of windowed setup will. So I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. I don't know if it's just. I was wondering if it was a kind of a power thing, because obviously even their base iPads now have a really powerful chip in them. But with you saying, I didn't realize they were going back so far to such kind of older models and letting those users access this stuff as well. So I mean, it's great.
It's great.
The more people that can use it, the better, I guess.
It's so not Apple though, because I'm just picturing. So like my daughter has an iPad 8th generation, which is not an old iPad. It's 4 or 5 years old, but her multitasking. Actually, we'll talk about this before we finish up. But multitasking, she likes to use LumaFusion to edit her videos. And she could now, if she installed iPadOS 26, on her iPad 8th generation, she could be rendering out a 4K video in LumaFusion in the background while using other apps on that iPad. And I don't know, this is Apple used to protect you from this stuff because they said, look, that's going to degrade your performance so much, we're not going to even let you do it, even though you technically could. And now it's almost like they've just opened the floodgates and said, yeah, but we're just going to let you have a crack. And I wonder, will that be the case? Like, will we get to the public beta and then the full version, and will we see some creep there? Would they dare start removing devices saying, actually, through our beta testing, we found the user experience was not okay on these lower end iPads, so now it's only going to be the higher end ones? I hope not, but yeah, I wouldn't put it past them at this stage.
Wait and see. Yeah.
Yes. We will wait and see. So that's your. Do you have any other iPad OS 26 things from the videos you've done so far, from your experience, from what you've used, that you'd like to share or pass on before we talk about what everyone's here to hear about, which is Logic Pro for iPad 2.2?
Not really. I mean, I've had a crack at a couple of developer betas in the past, and this is probably the most stable developer beta I've tried. I mean, you're right, things crash, and especially when you're using things like third-party AUV3 apps and trying to use them in GarageBand and Logic, then yeah, it doesn't always work. But general day-to-day stuff, everything just kind of works, which is kind of mad considering this is the first iteration of this software. So yeah, pleasantly surprised. I'm really interested to see what the final version of this looks like.
Very wise words, as am I, because this is definitely not the final version and the be all and end all. So changes to come, and can I just reiterate my warning there, because you and I will both have messages, emails, and comments on our videos in our inboxes saying, Pete and Patrick told me to install iPadOS 26 and it bricked my iPad, destroyed my iCloud drive, and I've no longer got any of my project files. Can we just say, we are not telling you to do this. Let us be your guinea pigs. Let us mess about with this stuff and wait, because there's nothing here that's going to be so much of a game changer that you need it now. Wait till September, and then when we give you the green light, install it. Or if you've got a second device, go ahead, go your hardest, play around with it. Logic Pro for iPad 2.2. First impressions, mate. When it dropped, so we were in the same, we've talked about this before, we were in the same position where we get the email, and I don't think I'm not allowed to say this, but we get the email and it's like, Apple have just dropped into chat or slid into your DMs or whatever the kids say these days, and they would like to talk to you about something, and it's like, okay, what's all this then? And then we find out, once we go through the whole process, that yes, we were both in the embargo situation. So when you first started looking at this stuff and you jumped into Logic Pro for iPad 2.2, first thoughts, what hit you?
So first of all, everything they added is fantastic. It's amazing, right? This time last year, they added so much new functionality with AI instruments and new kind of instruments to play, things like that. Overhauled the entire app. And as good as the improvements they've added here are, and we'll talk about them, it doesn't feel quite as grand, quite as big, especially when it is coming up to, for the people who paid for the year's subscription, it's coming up to renewal time. So this is obviously the time when they want to wow people and kind of convince them into redoing their subscription. So again, not to get back to iPadOS 26, I wonder if there's something else coming. After that is released, there's going to be another perhaps sizable update coming after that. Having said that, the stuff that is here is fantastic, and it's stuff that people, again, getting back to the theme of Apple finally listening to people, it's stuff that people have been asking for ages. So MIDI Learn should have been there from the very, very start. Absolutely. It took them far too long to implement it. But they have implemented it very well. Yeah. It's great. It's fantastic.
It works. It's
absolutely
good. And a little behind the scenes really stuff. I got a message from Patrick at release point that just was like MIDI Learn with like fireworks going off, and it was like, is this too much? And I'm like, no, it's exactly the right amount, because we knew exactly what people were waiting for. Yeah. And again, most of our comment sections and emails and Facebook group messages have been full of, but why can't we have MIDI Learn? I want MIDI Learn. Let's get some MIDI Learn. And now they dropped it. But of course, being Apple, they couldn't call it MIDI Learn. They had to flip the script and call it Learn MIDI. So I did have to have a bit of a chuckle with that it's like, it's the Learn MIDI function. It was like, it's been MIDI Learn in industry standard for 20 years. But sure, we'll call it Learn MIDI. We will talk about Learn MIDI. See, I can't even say that. We'll talk about that, but let's ease into that, and we'll get to MIDI Learn in a moment, because it's pretty darn cool. What about the flashback capture, the recording when you're not recording? Have you had to play with that one, and what do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, it works.
It does, I think,
which is always great. And it's that weird thing. It's a really, really, really cool feature that I don't think anybody asked for.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it.
But it does solve a problem. Again, it's not a problem that people were actively saying they were having. When you forget to press record, it will just capture your performance anyway, which is really good. And we have all been in that situation where you completely forget to press the button, or you are just jamming along, warming up to your track, and you think, oh no, that was amazing. Why wasn't I pressing record? And then you try and record it, and you can't hit the same notes and stuff. So we've all been there, and it will be useful. Will it be useful for everybody? I don't know. I mean, it came to the Mac as well. I don't know if it's a feature that will perhaps be more useful in a Mac studio environment. So if you've got a band in and you're warming up and stuff, you can kind of capture takes on the fly without them knowing. That kind of stuff would be quite handy. But
that would be good. Yeah. If you're just like, we're just playing back the track for some sound checks, and then they play an awesome take.
Well, it's that old audio engineer trick, isn't it, where you get people to relax? You say, just do a practice run.
That's
and
right.
Then you record it.
What is it? ABR, always be recording, because you never know when you're going to capture lightning in a bottle.
Exactly. Yeah. Have you found much use for it? Have you found it has transformed your workflow, Pete?
Not even a bit. No, I demoed it, and it was cool, and it worked well, and you can do it with MIDI. Oh, by the way, if you don't know what this is, we should probably explain. So this is where if you hit play and you've got a track that you're playing on. So say you've got a MIDI keyboard, the new wonderful Audio Kit synth or whatever it is, and you're playing something in, and you're not recording, but you're just playing along. If you then stop that, you can actually get to the recording. So it's cool. I need to cough one moment. I did warn Patrick before the show that I would have to cough at least once. I may or may not edit that out, so you'll find out in the post. But yeah, if those I didn't hit record moments, it could work well. And the cool thing is with audio, that was unexpected. So the fact that it worked with a microphone as well as a MIDI instrument is kind of cool. That you can just be, like you say, jamming along on guitar or recording your microphone, and it's still there. It's cool. Normalize region gain. Is this just the merge function from GarageBand? And why isn't it as good as the merge function from GarageBand? Have you played with this one where you can normalize your region gain on your tracks?
I don't know why you would need to be honest. I don't know if I'm just being incredibly sonically naive there, but unless it's some kind of recording that hasn't kind of got to the right level, or if you're mixing and something isn't quite hitting right, or if it's if your voiceover or something, you need to bring that level up to a kind of a hearable volume. Is that what we're going for? That's what we're going for.
Yeah.
It was a feature in Mac and has been for a long time, and it was something that perhaps was just missing from the iPad version that they've had lots of requests for. So there's a form you can fill out where you can submit bug reports and request different features for Logic Pro for iPad and Logic Pro for Mac. So it might have been a requested feature they've been asked for, and they have then put it into the iPad. But for me personally, in my workflow, it's not something I've found a huge amount of use for, really, or at least not yet.
What Patrick's saying is that his gain staging is pristine. He would never record with his input gain or his output gain set at anything but perfect levels. No, you're right. I say that in jest because you're right. It's not exactly the most useful function. I guess the one thing that, as someone who's got other people's tracks and brought them in, sometimes people do send me tracks and they clearly haven't set their input levels where I say, which is 50 to 70% on your input gain, which is about the sweet spot. And they're so low that I can't even see the waveform. So I'm in there trying to mix and trying to edit, and I'm having to pump up the gain or throw a bunch of compression on there. So yeah, being able to just, I guess, take something in a digital world where you're not going to get all that hiss and noise floor and stuff, and be able to bring it up to a level where it's at least it's sort of close to the unity gain that it probably should have been recorded at in the first place, it is kind of handy. And look, I've been experimenting with it to see whether it can also, gain things down. But I don't know. We've talked about the automated normalization and automated compression in GarageBand. And anytime I hear the word normalize, I kind of have a little bit of a flashback, not a flashback capture, but a flashback to GarageBand where it's like, of all the changes they've implemented, why can't we just have the auto normalization turned off on GarageBand iOS exports? So, yeah, it's a thing, but I don't think it'll get a lot of use. On the other hand, have you played with the new improved 6-track stem splitter in Logic Pro 2.2?
It's great, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
it's really good. I wasn't aware of how rare it is to have the ability to separate out the guitars and have them in their own track and to do that well. Because obviously there are other stem separation services out there that do a very similar thing to what Logic Pro for iPad does, but to separate these all out into separate tracks, you can tell that. Especially when you separate out the guitars, I find when you separate guitars out, the guitars sound great. The other tracks that you've separated them out from tend to get a little bit more artifacty than they were previously in the other version when guitar and keyboard was just shoved into one track called Other. So yeah, I really like that, and I really like that they've added the preset so you can just with one click create an acapella. Or with one click, you can create a backing track from what you've from your track. Really, really good, and I think a lot of different use cases for it. So unlike the kind of flashback capture, you can absolutely look at this function and see, people are going to use that for this. They're going to use that for practicing. They're going to use that for creating, vocal covers, things like that. So I think it's great.
Yeah,
there you go.
Patrick agrees. Patrick, great. There you go. I think it's great. Apple will use that in their next tagline. Patrick, GarageBand guide. I think it's great. It really is. Look, it's actually kind of magic, and I know I'm going to be accused of being an Apple fan person. It's like, you drank the Kool-Aid, etc. Insert meme here, but. My goodness, I've used some of these third-party apps, and I've used some of these paid apps that you pay a lot of money for or subscriptions for that do the stem splitting, and none of them are as good as what Apple does with Logic Pro's stem splitter. And the fact that it's just built in, and you can argue, it's a subscription, but you pay $5 a month or $50 a year to have a complete DAW on your iPad as well as this. It's almost like it's worth the price of entry by itself. Because if you've ever done that thing where you're like, I'd really like to learn how to sing this song, well, bring it in, like pull it into your Logic session and split out the stems. And like you said, you don't even have to go in and go to the painstaking detail of having to just mute out your vocals. You now just go, instrumental track, please. And it pulls out the vocals, and it uses that vocal isolation plugin that Apple have now across GarageBand and Logic Pro and the entire iOS and Mac ecosystem is phenomenally good.
Yeah.
I don't know how it works. I don't know what sort of voodoo that they do to make it work behind the scenes, but it absolutely just works so well. And like I say, to bring the guitars and the horns and the keyboards and separate all that stuff out. If you haven't played with this stuff yet, you have to do it. So, and if you're not aware of what this is, so Logic Pro for iPad not always, from version 2.1 or was it 2.0? I'm getting so confused.
2.0,
now.
wasn't it? Yeah.
It was 2.0. It was the big update that you were talking about from last year. They introduced the stem splitter, which split your tracks into 4 different tracks, and it was vocals, it was bass, it was drums, and it was other. And guitars, keyboards, horns, like synths, everything just got smooshed into other. And now you get guitars separated out from your pianos and your keys and from your other instruments. So it is just phenomenally good and has a whole lot of uses. And you nor I would ever recommend that people take, say, commercial music and bring it in to their Logic Pro sessions and create their own karaoke party. But if you wanted to, you have that opportunity to do so.
Or you could create a TikTok account where you do a cappella versions of famous songs and upload it.
There you go.
That's what I did.
Is that what
That's
you
what
did?
I did last year.
Oh, you did too, didn't you?
Yeah.
Oh, see now. Oh, okay. See now,
Just
people
for
are gonna,
fun. It was just for fun.
I do remember that. I had blocked that from my memory for some reason. No, I just remembered that you did that because I was like, oh, that's really good because you were showcasing it really well. So there you go. Now I have to remember to put the TikTok for Patrick in the description. I don't think I even know your TikTok. You'll have to send it to me after the.
I think it's just my
record.
name. I don't know. I'm 41, Pete. I don't really understand TikTok. I don't really.
You're talking to the wrong guys about TikTok. Now, look, we didn't bury the lead. We kind of went there already, but MIDI Learn, mate. It's here now. I play with it. You play with it. You can twiddle your knobs. You can push your dials. You can tap your buttons. You can do all the things. For the uneducated, what is MIDI Learn or Learn MIDI? Why is it important? Why has everyone been wanting it for so long? And does this deliver what people want?
I think it does. So yeah, it allows you to attach a MIDI keyboard or a controller, and you can assign buttons, controls, dials, and keys to the buttons, controls, dials, and keys in Logic Pro for iPad. So it means you can control your digital audio workstation just from your keyboard, essentially, or your drum pads or whatever. Yeah, this was a big miss. A lot of people were asking for this in Logic Pro for iPad for a long time, and Apple, for some reason, were quite resistant to it. I imagine because if you have an iPad in front of you, it has a touch screen. If you want to change something, you press the screen, which I get, but I mean, a lot of people were asking for this, and a lot of people's workflows work like that. They have their MIDI controller and they control everything from what's in front of them. So yeah, this was a massive, massive addition. Again, I'm not sure what I can say specifically about talking to Apple. One of the people I spoke to said that this was the most requested thing they got from their feedback forums, and had been for about a year. So
Yes.
yeah, no, it's great. It works fantastic. They've implemented it very well. It's very simple. You tap a button, you switch all MIDI Learn, you press the key on your keyboard or your controller, you press the button you want it to control on Logic, you press done, and that's it. It just works. You can set some stuff up to work across the whole app. So things like transport controls, you can set that once, and then regardless of whether you're opening and closing projects, they will all just kind of stick and stay, or you can set project specific controls. So for example, if you have chroma verb on a vocal or chroma verb over several tracks in a project, you can set it up so that you can control the mix knob from one of the knobs on your keyboard, and then you move to another project and you need to set up other controls. So really
cool.
deep, really usable and a fantastic way to implement it, I think. Have you had much of a chance to kind of play around and get stuck into it?
I have, and it's, to be honest, it's not the sort of thing that I thought I would like. Look, I haven't used it a heap yet. I actually went out and bought, I mentioned this to you at the time, a new MIDI controller, because I'm like, I got no knobs. I got no MIDI controllers with knobs, because I've never really
Pete
been...
John's got no knobs.
Pete John's got no knobs. I've never been a knob twiddler, and there you go, you can quote that. I've never liked twiddling my knobs, but now I thought I got to try this out, and it's so cool. Like, even things that I didn't think would be cool, like the Alchemy synth. Like, you know, you can play with the different knobs while you're playing the Alchemy synth. Well, now you can physically turn knobs, and you can change things like the attack and the release and the delay and the filters by actually turning them, and then recording that in real time, and it will actually record in all of those changes. And you could always do that on the touchscreen. Like you said, Apple would have said, people just can grow extra hands and just like do it all on the touchscreen. Touchscreen feels just like real things, doesn't it? And it really doesn't. So as soon as you go to this, you're like, oh, this is where it's at. And even just now, when I've got my MIDI keyboard over here, and I can just hit the record button over there, or just hit the play button, like the transport controls, I'm like, this is so cool. This is what we always wanted. And as you said, I've always been a little intimidated by this stuff, because this is a secret. I don't want to share it with too many people, but I don't know much about MIDI. I don't know the channels. I don't know all the details. I don't know how it all works. It's all just some magic thing to me. So for me, MIDI Learn was always really intimidating, because it's like you have to program your controller to control MIDI CC event number 127. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. But this is like exactly what you said. It's like button. Oh, now that button is that button, and that's as hard as it is. And you can even do it either way. So one time I'm like, oh no, I pressed the button and then I pressed the key. It's like, no, we got you back, Johns. Don't worry about it. We still know what you meant. So yeah, it was actually really well implemented, and
absolutely,
it's a cool thing. We'll talk. I was going to say we'll segue into iPad on the Mac versus the iPad, but we've got to talk Dance Floor Rush first. Your opinion of the new sound pack?
It's good, yeah.
And that's it. It's good. I know. You could tell I needed a cough there. It's good. It does good things.
Sorry, should I say more to cover more of your cough?
A little bit.
I think it's fantastic. It's really good. Packed full of content on Logic, and also packed full of content in GarageBand as well. I think there was a worry for a while there with the last few sound pack releases that perhaps GarageBand was going to start to get less of this stuff. It was just going to be samples and kind of a very light version of the packs that were landing in Logic Pro, but this is actually quite a sizable release in GarageBand as well. Sounds are really good. It's not really anything that we've had in GarageBand or Logic in terms of sounds and samples and instruments before, which is really good. It's always good to see kind of new stuff added. It's not another hip-hop pack. We've got about 17 of those already. Not that there's anything wrong with hip-hop, but we just don't need 17 different variations of it. And yeah, it's good. I mean, as someone who was kind of into drum and bass a little bit when he was younger and stuff, especially in the UK, there was a big drum and bass scene. It's not exactly that. Yeah, it is possibly skewing more on the EDM side of things. But I mean, a lot of the breaks, a lot of the drum stuff is really good. It's just some of the synth stuff is maybe more kind of reminds me more of kind of mid 2000s, 2010s EDM stuff. But it's still good. It's still all usable. But yeah, it's a solid release and not something we've seen in Logic or GarageBand before. Have you had much of a fiddle with it?
I've had a wee fiddle. So I've played with it a little bit, but
can't be a wee fiddle.
And a wee fiddle with my knob. I've played with it a bit, but and I agree with that. Even though that like some of the things, and people will say, but it's different between GarageBand and Logic, only because Logic has things like samples that can separate out the samples that are used in the loops. Like GarageBand just doesn't have that functionality. So yeah, you will find some differences. All the sounds are still there. It's just that in Logic Pro you can actually separate out the individual samples compared to the whole loops. But I do like that there seems to be consistency now. So this came out and it actually, the Mac had lost one of the packs and that got caught up as well. So with all these new updates, we're now back on a level playing field. So I don't think there's any packs, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure the comments will as well, but I don't think there's any packs that aren't everywhere now. I think everywhere's got everything.
They're not in GarageBand for Mac. GarageBand for Mac hasn't had an update in about, oh god, quite a few months now anyway. So they're still, so they're signed. So I need to double check with Dance Floor Rush, but for the previous ones like the Tosin Abasi pack and stuff, if you import a GarageBand for iOS project file that has those loops in there, you'll trigger a download in GarageBand for Mac that will add that sound pack to GarageBand for Mac. But there's a native release as such. So unless you went through those steps, you wouldn't have access to that or these most recent sound packs.
I'm just having a flashback, not a flashback capture, but a flashback to, I think someone, maybe a Scottish bloke, made a video about that, about how you can bring some of these packs into GarageBand.
Several videos, yeah. Every time they lag behind, I make a video and then they eventually sort themselves out, yeah.
So if you need to know how to do that, go and search GarageBand Guide, Where Be Sound Pack Mac, Why You Hate Sound Packs in Mac, or something like that.
That's the exact title.
Yeah.
How did you know that?
And you'll find it. You'll be good to go. All right. Well, thank you for covering my mild coughing fit there by talking about the Dance Floor Rush sound pack. Let's talk about because when Logic Pro for iPad, and we're running long here, Patrick. So I hope you're okay for another 5 minutes.
Yeah,
we'll finish up here. It's too interesting. I told you there'd be tangents. So when GarageBand Logic Pro for iPad came out, the Mac users said things along the lines of, "This isn't a Pro DAW. This isn't a replacement for Logic Pro on Mac. I can't believe it's not just called GarageBand Pro. This is not Logic." Are we any closer? Does all of these changes with iPadOS 26, with Logic Pro for iPad 2.2, with MIDI Learn, with all this stuff, are we any closer to closing that gap, or is there still a distinct difference between Logic Pro on Mac and Logic Pro on iPad?
I think there's still a distinct difference, for sure. I still get people in comments in Logic Pro videos, Logic Pro for iPad videos, asking whether they can use Contact. They want to use VSTs.
Yep.
So why can't I use this in Logic Pro for iPad? And I mean, it's not a Logic Pro for iPad issue. It's the plugins aren't compatible with iPadOS. But anyway, that's a whole other kettle of fish. There's still differences. I think people, for some reason, expected Apple to slowly but surely bring every single Logic Pro for Mac feature, plugin thing across to the iPad, and they haven't done that. And I don't really know if they will do that. So things like flex pitch and stuff still isn't available in Logic Pro for iPad. Some people seem to be very offended by that fact for some reason. But yeah, there's definitely some differences. It's interesting. On the one hand, I think that perhaps they're not for the same audiences, they're not for the same people. I think people in Logic Pro for Mac assumed that they would be able to move across to an iPad now. They can just get rid of their $2,000 Mac Pro and then just grab a $400 iPad and it'll just do the exact same thing, which isn't the case. More's the pity. But then Apple don't do themselves any favours with it either. So in Logic Pro for Mac, I don't know when the last time you opened it was, but when you open it, you're greeted with a third of a page advertisement for Logic Pro for iPad.
Yeah. And it is weird because it's the same thing, and like you say, they don't do themselves favors. They use words like round trip compatibility, which then people go, well, yes, as long as you don't use any features in Logic Pro for Mac that aren't compatible with iPad, then of course it's round trip compatibility. But the second you add a VST, or the second you use Flex Pitch, or the second you use anything that is not iPadOS compatible, then it's not going to be able to come back into iPadOS. So it's an interesting thing. And look, I think it should be Logic Pro for iPad, but I think that despite the Apple marketing side of it, I would say, and will continue to say, that if you're rocking a Mac Pro, like you said, with 8 terabytes of samples and loops and contact libraries and VSTs, and you're using a 32-channel control surface with it that's not class compliant, so won't work with your iPad anyway, you probably need to just keep it. And you've got 2 screens, like 32-inch screen. Like that's your setup, and you've kind of chosen that. Whereas Others, you want a portable way. And hey, maybe you want both. So why not have both? Why not have your portable system for when you're doing things on the go, and then you can move it over. A lot of people I know and a lot of people in the community start their projects in GarageBand on their phone, and then they stick it into Logic Pro for iPad, and then they move it across to Logic Pro on the Mac to do the final mix and master. And I think that's an absolutely legitimate workflow as well. So
Absolutely. It's interesting. If Apple were to put perhaps not more effort into the compatibility between the two platforms. Do you remember? So when Apple Silicon came out, they had a compatibility layer, Rosetta 2.
Yes.
So that Intel-based programs could work on Apple Silicon-based Macs, and it gave developers time to actually make Apple Silicon versions of their programs that would work on Macs. I would love to see Apple have something like that in place for third-party VSTs that people are using in Logic that could be used in Logic Pro for iPad. Quite a big ask and quite a lot of work, I think. But I mean, I think Apple have kind of taken the opinion that compatibility for these plugins and instruments, contact and things like that, that's the developers need to put the work in to make iPad versions of these plugins. And developers, the vast majority of them have just said, nah, I'm all right. Or they've made iPad versions, and because the App Store on iOS is such a different market from the plugin market on desktop, and there's quite a lot less money involved in it, they have two different versions. So Baby Audio, for example, don't have universal versions of their effects and instruments. They have a Mac version that you pay for, and if you want the iOS or iPad version, you have to pay for that separately because it's a separate product. Whereas I think if Apple had a translation layer or something like that would automatically kind of convert the way these plugins work, because it's all audio units. I know it's different versions, but it's all, as far as I'm aware, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an expert, but it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Surely it wouldn't be too much work to have something in the middle that could translate the way these things work on different platforms.
100%. See, there you go. This is why you.
Is that
you
like a
tune
mad
into
idea?
This. No, it's a great idea. That's why you tune into this show, and that's why you need to go and subscribe to the GarageBand Guide, the Logic Pro Guide, and
for more
all
tangents
of the
like
things.
that.
Yeah, I know, right? Beautiful tangent, because we are desperately short on time. We're already into like the overtime segment, so blow the whistle.
I'll shut up now. Sorry.
No, it was great. and look, just to add to that, to go even further over time, I've often thought that Logic Pro is not available on iPhone, but there could be a Logic Pro player on iPhone so that you could listen to and maybe just check out your Logic Pro tracks, and maybe it just freezes them down and lets you just play back without the full interface. And maybe that's something you could do between Mac and iPadOS, which is because a lot of times you just want to listen to your mix on the go, or maybe you want to add a track to it, and then the ability to be able to just still use that. And maybe when you export it, similar to what you did between GarageBand iOS and Mac, when you want to send a Mac project, you say export as GarageBand iOS. Why wouldn't you export a Logic Pro Mac project and say export it as Logic Pro iPad, and then just freeze and bounce down any tracks that use plugins that aren't going to be compatible? Like there's definitely ways. And
Genius.
There you go. But I want to say a couple of things. You mentioned it before, but please fill in your feedback forms. Like the very fact that you've heard from Apple and I heard the same thing, and again, we're probably not allowed to talk about this because Apple don't like you talking about what they say, but they honestly do listen. We see the end result. We hear what you say, and then we see what Apple implement. And not always auto normalization on GarageBand. Not always do the things actually become features, but quite often they do. So all of those bug fixes and stability improvements that we get so frustrated about, they all come from users, and they all come from you. So complaining is fine, and it's fun, and yes, you can go and rant on your Facebook groups and in the comments and in the chats, but also log a ticket with Apple. Go to the feedback forum. It'll take you 3 minutes, and you can have a rant to them, and you might think when you hit submit it goes into the wilderness and nothing happens. But if enough people do it, if enough people say MIDI learn, Apple will implement it and call it Learn MIDI. So you do have power here, folks. Finally, final question for you, Patrick. We've talked a lot about Logic Pro. We've talked a lot about Mac. We've talked a lot about these new iOSs and OSs and iPadOSs. Poor old GarageBand iOS. you mentioned it before. It did at least get the dance floor rush pack. What is the future of GarageBand iOS? Is it the forgotten poor cousin of everything else? Or if folks out there right now that are GarageBand iOS creators, should they still be feeling like they've got a platform that has a future?
Absolutely, of course. I mean, as much as we're talking about these changes coming to the iPad, these changes aren't coming to the iPhone. And GarageBand is as popular on the iPhone as it is on the iPad. And that is two platforms where you currently, anyway, have the ability to kind of chop back and forth with zero issues whatsoever.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't imagine that Apple will make GarageBand go anywhere. I think it'll still get content updates. It still has to compete as an entry level digital audio workstation with something like BandLab, and I think Apple would be ridiculously stupid to get rid of that kind of into the Apple music making ecosystem. I think they've done not a great job, apart from slapping an advertisement for Logic Pro for iPad in the sound library of GarageBand, even on iPhone, which you can't get Logic Pro on an iPhone.
Oh yeah, I'll check that out. Oh, I can't.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, I think it's always been a way to provide an excellent and powerful introduction to making music on an iOS platform, whether that's iPhone or iPad. I think it will continue to be, and I think it will continue to get content updates in the kind of sound packs, things like that. Will it get more features? I don't think so. I think we're going to be waiting for that, or the removal of auto normalization for a long time. But it's really interesting that the system level changes that Apple are making can affect these apps so much that you really are going to get a whole lot more functionality on an iPad from GarageBand with the stuff coming in iPadOS 26.
Brilliant. Oh, yeah. No, I agree. And like you say, just the very fact that you can use it on your phone, you can use it in your pocket. It's still the only like native, every iPhone ever sold in the entire world has GarageBand in your pocket the second that you open it up. And I got to say, always will. And the fact that with iPadOS and iOS 26, GarageBand kind of already got the most love. It got the new menuing system and it got the ability to have all these changes. And you can now jump into the advanced settings right in the menu items from GarageBand and mouse control and trackpad control. So, yeah, it's not that it's not getting stuff. It's just, like you say, I think all the new features, we kind of got everything we need in GarageBand now. Everything you need to just get the job done is there. And then if you want the extras and the bells and whistles, then Logic Pro for iPad is there. It's almost like a bloke should just have two different channels, one called the GarageBand Guide and one called the Logic Pro Guide, which is a great way to finish up here. Patrick, what's happening with you around your channels at the moment, and any news and insights and updates and things that by the time folks watch this in a couple of days' time, you might be working on or they can look forward to?
I just need a second after that incredibly smooth segue, Pete. That was absolute masterclass. What am I doing? I wrote it down here. Let me see what am I doing. We are looking at what are we doing. So by the time this video goes out, there will be a video on the Logic Pro guide that's going out today as we're recording, but obviously in the past, if you're watching this in the future, Marty, talking about iPadOS 26 and how that affects, or the beta at least, and how that affects Logic Pro for iPad and any new stuff. Spoiler alert, it's not quite as dramatic as the changes to GarageBand, but there's still some cool stuff as well. Looking at recording in GarageBand and Logic Pro, what audio interfaces to use, what mics to use, stuff like that. And then I've also, for Mac users, I've got a big in-depth mastering course on the way in the next few weeks, which uses all of the built-in stuff in GarageBand and one free plugin that you can bring across so that you can master your own music and release it from GarageBand on your Mac without any extra stuff. So yeah, busy.
Love it. Love hearing the Mac love, because again, I legitimately say that because whenever I get a comment or a question on this channel saying GarageBand Mac, where do I go? How do I know? I say there's one guy to go to, and it's Patrick from the GarageBand Guide, and I send him your way because you have the knowledge, you have the power. So thank you for being here. Thank you to my guest Patrick. It's always an absolute delight to have you here on the show. And GarageBand Weekly's been going for nigh on 5 years now, and I reckon you are the number one guest that we've had on this, more than anyone else in the history of the show.
Suck it, Jade. Yes.
Jade and Dan Baker are there furious right now because they're like, oh, we're going to get on there again soon. But no, thank you everyone for watching this. If you do have questions, look, I haven't made this joke, but I do it every time we have Patrick on here. If you have easy questions, drop them in the comments. If you have hard questions, head over to the GarageBandGuide.com and hassle Patrick and ask him all of your really difficult questions. On behalf of my guest, Patrick, this has been the GarageBand Guide. And as we say at the end of each and every show, please, folks, be kind to yourselves, be kind to others, keep creating, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.